Country music legend Vince Gill, age 67, is now speaking out, and his recent confirmation has fans in shock. Rumors about his history, relationships, and behind-the-scenes actions have followed him for years. He's always let his music speak for itself, preferring humility and elegance over rumors. However, he's now decided to correct the record for the first time. The reality? It's more unexpected than everyone anticipated. What could upend such a well-liked and esteemed artist's foundation? Why now? What impact will this discovery have on his legacy? One thing's sure, regardless of whether you've been a fan for a long time or are just interested in the guy behind the voice, Vince Gill's confession changes everything. Vince Gill. Vince Gill is among the most well-liked and respected people in country music. His rich tenor voice, poignant lyricism, and unparalleled guitar talents have earned him recognition throughout his 4-decade career. After first becoming well-known in the late 1970s, Gill rose to fame as a solo performer in the 1980s and 1990s, winning an incredible 22 Grammy Awards, more than any other male country musician. In addition to his musical prowess, he's respected for his humility, kindness, and unwavering dedication to the art. Vince Gill continues to be a significant presence in the business and a genuine representative of country music, whether playing with the Eagles, delivering timeless tunes, or working with luminaries. The birth and early life. Vincent Grant Gill was born in Norman, Oklahoma on April 12, 1957, and was meant to be a musician. Vince was exposed to music at a young age since he was raised in a home that valued education and the arts. His father, J. Stanley Gill, was a part-time country singer who played guitar and banjo in addition to becoming a federal judge. His father's love of bluegrass and traditional country music sparked Vince's devotion. Music was always more than background noise in the Gill home. It was a way of life. Diverse range of musical influence. Vince was exposed to various musical influences while growing up in Oklahoma City. Jareen Gill, his mother, urged him to pursue his gifts. He had already trained himself to play several instruments by the time he was in primary school, including the mandolin, guitar, banjo, and bass. Bluegrass greats like Flatt and Scruggs and traditional country musicians like Buck Owens and Merle Haggard influenced his early musical preferences. However, Vince didn't stick to a single genre. His appreciation of rock, gospel, and jazz eventually influenced his multifaceted style. Northwest Classen High School. During his high school years, Vince's innate skill became more noticeable. He continued to refine his multi-instrumental talents while playing in bluegrass ensembles at Northwest Classen High School. He became a member of Mountain Smoke, a progressive bluegrass band that became well-known around the area. At this point, Vince started giving more frequent performances, gaining the stage presence and self-assurance that would later characterize his career. He faced many personal challenges. Even though he was becoming increasingly popular as a young artist, Vince had a lot of personal issues. Vince was extremely close to Bob Cohen, his half-brother, who was seriously hurt in a vehicle accident and spent the rest of his life in a coma. Vince was deeply affected by the emotional weight of that catastrophe, which gave his songs and performances a deeper emotional dimension. Vince took a risk and relocated to Louisville, Kentucky, to join the Bluegrass Alliance after graduating from high school in the middle of the 1970s. Although his tenure with the band was brief, it was a significant stepping stone. After a while, he relocated to Los Angeles and joined the band Sundance. In 1979, he joined the country rock outfit Pure Prairie League. His professional career began with that chance, setting the stage for his eventual solo fame. Passion, perseverance, and love for music. Vince Gill's early years were characterized by enthusiasm, tenacity, and a strong love for music. He went from a small child growing up surrounded by instruments in an Oklahoma family to a budding artist on the national scene. These early encounters influenced the artist he would become and the principles of his humility, commitment, and genuineness that still serve as his compass today. The shocking revelation. Vince Gill is one of the most well-known performers in the country music business today. He's won 18 Country Music Association awards and 22 Grammy Awards for his outstanding career. However, at 67, Vince Gill has finally spoken out. And believe me when I say that this makes a huge difference. Some followers question, why did he wait so long to say this? While others are in awe. You'll either be surprised, relieved, or have a different perspective on Vince Gill in the end. The truth behind the Eagles membership. Music was almost in Vince Grant Gill's blood from birth. It seemed as if the cosmos had already predetermined his fate when he first picked up the little 4-string tenor guitar as a boy. Naturally, he quickly advanced to a full-sized 6-string because, let's face it, some individuals are made to play. His parents also witnessed it. They realized their boy had something unique, so they weren't simply giving him toy guitars and calling it a day. By the time he was 10, they invested significantly in him and bought him a Gibson ES-335, an electric guitar that befits a gifted child. His musical career was up and going in an instant. From a small-town boy to making history. However, who could have predicted at the time that this young man from a tiny town who loved playing the strings would join one of the greatest rock bands in history? Unexpected events often occur in life, and for Vince Gill, one of the most significant ones happened after the death of Glenn Frey in 2016. They said it was only rumors. They maintained that the truth would never be revealed. However, Vince Gill is finally coming out at the age of 67, confirming the decades-long suspicions that have been swirling about him. A few admirers are having a party. Some people are devastated. Additionally, the music business could never be the same. The bigger story. What had he disclosed? And what kept him quiet for so long? Nobody anticipated how enormous this story would be. Now, you would recall how uncertain everything seemed if you were an Eagles fan back then. In addition to being a co-founder and the voice behind some of the band's greatest songs, Glenn Frey was an indisputable component of the group. I don't see how we could go out and play without the guy who started the band, Don Henley said. And to be honest, who could blame him? Losing a band member is one thing, but losing an essence of the ensemble is quite another. That kind of grief is distinct. Conversations that no one could predict. The Eagles seemed to be doomed, but destiny had other ideas. Conversations were taking place behind the scenes that nobody could have foreseen. Let's introduce Vince Gill. This was more than his waking up one morning and saying, "Hey, I think I'll join the Eagles today." Something that happened in the background, silently. Irving Azoff, the band's manager, contacted Larry Fitzgerald, Vince's manager. At that point, things began to move. Fun fact, Vince was more closely associated with the band than most people knew. The puzzle pieces waiting to come. He and Glenn Frey had the same management when the Eagles split up. These little parts of the puzzle have been waiting to fit together. However, Vince didn't anticipate receiving a formal invitation despite that relationship. Caught him totally off guard. It's not something you can dream up and think about and want, he acknowledged retrospectively. But what about when the chance arose? Yes, he didn't think twice. His answer to their question was as polished as ever. When do we leave? Don't overthink things. Please don't worry about it. Simply excitement, because let's face it, you don't act coy when the Eagles invite you to join them. You accept, pick up your instrument, and go out. We wanted to honor the legacy. However, joining a band like the Eagles requires more than simply showing up and playing. Vince knew they were some of rock history's most recognizable rock tunes. He wanted to respect the heritage rather than intervene and make changes. He painstakingly went through their library to choose songs that would make sense for him to play. Furthermore, he didn't choose the simple ones. He sang hits that millions of fans like, including Lion Eyes, New Kid in Town, Take It to the Limit, and Tequila Sunrise. And he understood. He was aware that these were memories rather than just tunes, moments, lifetimes spent immersed in music. Playing them note for note. I can't imagine not hearing those songs and not hearing the iconic lines, the iconic backgrounds. everything that made the arrangement of those records so great, he said, because the last thing he wanted to do was take away what made them so wonderful in the first place. He decided to play them note for note, while adhering to the original arrangements. His relationship with Don Henley is another. Chemistry had to be perfect. It wasn't simply a matter of, let's find a guy who can sing and play guitar. Fortunately, Vince and Henley had developed a musical bond long before the Eagles were possible. That confidence was established when they collaborated on Henley's Cass Country record. Because he knows how to be in a band. Henley had the ideal response when people began to wonder why the Eagles would bring in a country guy. Because he knows how to be in a band. Vince found it to be significant. He didn't join the Eagles to be the next Glenn Frey or to get attention. His only goal was to respect what had previously been established, perform the music, and add, he answered, I don't have to have the attention, which was the most excellent way to express it. He was a fantastic match because of his mindset. I don't have to have the spotlight. Wasn't just another concert. Talk about an emotional event at his first show with the band, which took place at Dodger Stadium in 2017. Nor was he alone himself. There with him was Glenn's son, Deacon Frey, who brilliantly and tragically filled his father's shoes. You could sense how heavy it was. This concert was more significant than others, something that represented the band's progress while clinging to its history. What about Vince? He knew that. He was aware that this was not about him. The goal was to preserve these tunes for as long as possible. The kind of story only music can write. In the present day, Vince continues to perform with the Eagles on their last tour, which is scheduled to conclude in 2025. You go from being a little child with a guitar to performing Take It to the Limit with the Eagles in front of thousands of fans. Only music is capable of telling that type of tale. Although Vince Gill has always let his music speak for himself, he's now addressing the allegations that have plagued him for the first time in years. He confirms what many assumed at age 67. But none were ready for the reality. The world of country music is booming. The business may never see him the same way again, and fans are in disbelief. This knowledge is going to alter everything, so stay tuned. Marriage Journey with Amy Grant. The romance between Vince Gill and Amy Grant is like one of those fairy tales, too good to be true. It all began in 1993 when Vince Gill and she were shooting Christmas in Tulsa, Oklahoma. This was no ordinary Christmas special, however. It happened when their paths unexpectedly and beautifully collided. Amy, already a massive celebrity in her own right, appeared as a guest on the program. Is it possible? There was an electrifying vibe between the two gifted musicians as soon as they entered the same room. The special moment. Vince can still vividly recall that moment. Vince, a lovely person, observed Amy's face wrinkled in what he likely assumed was tension or fear as she entered the practice room. What did he do? Hey, untangle that forehead, he murmured as he approached her. It'll be all right. Smooth, huh? However, there was something there. Imagine Vince, already enthralled by her enthusiasm, recognizing something that further distinguished her, that grin. They were closer via music. The adhesive was that. Their first duet. Amy invited Vince to record their first duet, House of Love, after they performed together at 3 Christmas gatherings that year. How unique is that? They could work together musically, and that duet started something more. Nevertheless, they remained faithful to their spouses despite that spark. Amy married Christian musician Gary Chapman, while Vince married country music performer Janice Oliver. Although their connection was evident to everyone, they were not rushing into anything and honored their obligations. The pull between them. You could sense it, Amy later said. The energy was palpable to all of us. There was no denying the draw between them. Even if not everyone in their immediate vicinity agreed, they tried to maintain decorum and handle the matter honorably. Between 1993 and 1999, Vince and Amy had a difficult time. Amy's right when she refers to them as those long years. Their connection and desire compounded everything. They had to deal with a lot of judgment. However, it must have been challenging to know that respecting their established limits was the proper course of action while being unable to take action on something so serious. Nevertheless, everyone had a different perspective on the matter. Both faced a lot of criticism, and most people expected the worst. What was painful was that most people assumed the worst of us, Vince said after giving it some thought. Additionally, it was unfair and wrong. Isn't that simply the way things are? Individuals are making snap judgments without fully comprehending the situation. Vince's divorce hit the headlines. However, they were unaffected by it. Even though their attraction became greater daily, they maintained their integrity. Then it proceeded, slowly but steadily as life does. Amy was shocked when Vince's divorce made news in 1997. It seemed more genuine since she never thought it would happen so quickly. In 1999, Amy's marriage was nearing its conclusion. She'd always spoken about how difficult her marriage to Gary Chapman had been from the beginning, and it terminated after 17 years. Although it was a difficult period for her, it was also when she and Vince could be together without any restrictions. Things began to fall into place. Amy quickly confirmed her connection with Vince after her divorce. They formally announced it 4 months later, and things started to work out for them. They were married in a stunning outdoor wedding close to Nashville in March 2000. Their kids were there to witness the day, and it was a small wedding with just close friends and family. Things worked out because they let things happen naturally rather than forcing them. It's pretty amazing how Vince and Amy's friendship developed from a 1993 Christmas special into a lasting alliance. It's evidence that the most incredible things in life may sometimes appear when you least expect them to. Additionally, there are instances when you must exercise patience and let things unfold naturally. Everything comes together when the timing is perfect. Vince Gill has one of the most prestigious careers of any musicians, yet even legends are susceptible to myths. At 67, he's now speaking out and confirming what many people have been speculating about for years. Many people are astonished, others feel validated, and some are left with more questions than answers due to the enormous response. Supporting Amy through health battles. There have been many highs and lows in Vince Gill and Amy Grant's romance, but nothing has tested their relationship more than their shared health issues. It all began in 2020 because, let's face it, life doesn't simply toss curveballs softly, it hurls them with all its might. When Vince's doctor recommended that Amy be checked out, presumably out of caution, he was at his regular appointment. Who would have imagined that a simple suggestion would completely upend their world? But that's precisely what took place. After Amy underwent testing, the physicians found that she had PAPVR, a rare congenital heart abnormality. Doesn't sound easy. For that reason, it is. Only about 1 in 143 persons has this disease. And the most terrifying aspect? She was unaware that she'd been living with it her whole life. Imagine being caught off guard by such unexpected news. It wasn't only you might need some meds. The doctor warned her that things might turn disastrous if she didn't receive help. Can you imagine hearing that? Amy, who's usually resilient, accepted it. However, Vince, his heart likely fell. Amy thus had open heart surgery in June 2020 during a pandemic when no one wanted to be in a hospital. Let's take a moment to consider that. Open heart surgery. You won't return to your feet in a week after small treatment. This was a severe matter, and if the operation wasn't a challenge enough, the stress of COVID-19 made things 10 times more difficult. The pandemic restrictions. Vince longed to be with her as her devoted husband, but hospital regulations severely restricted his visits. Can you picture yourself sitting at home, knowing that your wife is going through a trying time and not being able to support her? After what must have been the most extended, most nervous wait of his life, he was finally granted permission to go to her room. The epidemic had cleared his whole performance schedule. If there was one bright spot amid all the chaos, he was thus unable to be anywhere other than at Amy's side, and he remained there precisely. The unpredictable life. Being the capricious force it is, life decided it wasn't finished with them just when they felt they could breathe a little easier. When July 2022 rolled around, another crisis struck without warning. Amy hit a pothole and flew while riding her bike close to a golf course, most likely simply taking in the beautiful, quiet day. This wasn't merely a scratch and get back up scenario. Most of us have fallen off a bike at some time. Her brain was severely injured. Even though she wore a helmet, it wasn't enough to shield her from the hit. Nothing mattered more than being there for Amy. Vince immediately canceled 3 gigs after she was taken to the hospital without hesitation. Being present for Amy was the most important thing. It was not an easy recovery. Doctors predicted that it would take 12 to 18 months for her brain to repair after her memory problems were completely resolved. Is it even possible? Do you no longer recall things as clearly as you once did? Do you find it difficult to remember a conversation? As if that weren't enough, she subsequently needed shoulder surgery after having a cyst removed from her neck. It seemed to be one event followed by another. Vince, however, remained at her side the whole time, her steadfast hand amid the storm. He was her rock. "You just have to take one day at a time," he repeatedly reminded her. "Things happen to people daily. Here we are. I also adore you." The words made the ordeal bearable. Those comments were the only thing that kept her going at times. She subsequently acknowledged that it was easier to endure the suffering when she heard him repeat it every day, because it makes all the difference to know someone is always there for you when life throws you a curveball. Vince Gill's poignant lyrics and soulful voice have captivated fans for decades. Rumors, however, have presented a different image behind the scenes. Fans are in shock as he confronts the rumors head-on at age 67. For all these years, what's he been concealing? What made him decide to come clean now? Stay still, since everything changes after his confession. Musical evolution. Vince, who is 67, has had a career that most artists could only imagine. Fascinatingly, however, he continues to change despite the passage of time. After becoming one of the most well-known and respected figures in country music and earning 22 Grammys, you would think he'd relax and enjoy the journey. However, he continues to develop, push himself, and discover new avenues for creating authentic music. If you ask him directly, he'd tell you that he's now composing the greatest songs of his life. Not the most popular ones in the charts. They're not the ones that get the most radio attention, but the ones with the most significance. And isn't it the true purpose of music? He wants to capture those moments. He doesn't follow trends. He isn't attempting to duplicate his prior achievements. He's simply being honest when he creates. Vince now takes a very different approach to composing than he did in his youth. He wants to be a spectator and is not here to pass judgment or assign blame. Life occurs. Humans experience things. Also, he would like to document these times without expressing his feelings to others. It represents a substantial change compared to the number of popular songs published today. The majority attempt to adhere to a formula. However, Vince, he's more knowledgeable. He's been in the business long enough to know that creating songs is about sitting with an idea and letting it breathe, not pushing it out to have substance. He previously said you'd be wasting time without a solid concept. Experience is the only way to get that type of insight. Vince has always been a team player. Speaking of experience, let's discuss his partnerships. Although Vince has always worked well with others, he's recently become even more selective about his collaborators. Additionally, it's not only about choosing well-known names, it's also about collaborating with those that provide something novel and intriguing. He's dabbled in various musical genres from classic country to pop with Kelly Clarkson, rock with the Eagles, and traditional country sounds with emerging musicians. What's the most significant part? Getting credit is not essential to him. He has said that when there's no concern for who receives the credit, the true magic occurs. Because of that mentality, he's among the most sought-after country music collaborators. In a field where egos may often surpass the music, he infuses every production with an uncommon tone of humility. Vince's understanding about the music. However, it's intriguing to note how his tone has changed over time. Despite having a strong foundation in traditional country music, Vince knows that music evolves with every generation. He welcomes that shift rather than resisting it, as other artists do. Although he's receptive to new sounds, influences, and forms of self-expression, he continues to adhere to the traditional components that define country music. The man who fell in love with music. You would think he would slow down at the age of 67. He's doing the exact opposite. His involvement with the Grand Ole Opry has helped him feel closer to his origins than ever before. Every thought passes through that mental filter as he considers how a song might sound on that illustrious stage. And he stays grounded because of it. He's constantly changing, always learning, continually developing. However, he is fundamentally the same Vince Gill, who discovered music all those years ago, and he's a legend because of it. If you've watched the video till here, that means you've enjoyed the video. Subscribe. Don't forget to turn on the notifications bell icon